Good to be here. Thank you for the warm welcome and the claps. Really appreciate it. It's the best welcome I had since I came here. Before I get started, is anyone familiar with something called the ELK stack? Raise your hand, yeah? ELK stack? No? Oh, a few people. Jaeger? Anyone using Jaeger? OpenTelemetry? Yeah, rings a bell. Prometheus? Rings a bell? Yeah? Okay, you're in the right session. It's nice to see everyone. My name is Tomer Levy. I skipped my personal slide. I think it's boring, but I'll give you 10 seconds. I'm the CEO of Logs.io. We're a cloud observability company. About 1,400 paying customers. Some of the greatest names here and some of the sponsors actually on this page before we started our large Logs.io customers, so very proud to be here. I'm going to do something pretty strange today. I'm going to talk about why observability is broken. And I think across the industry, you walk around the booth, and it's a beautiful booth, and a lot of lights, and you see all the great names. I am actually, and being part of this market, I actually think it's pretty broken. We're trying to change it. I'll tell you why. First, I'm a developer. I wrote code all my life. I really, really love open source. The main reason is I hate paying for software. I hate paying for anything, definitely not for software. And I said, oh, this is a cool open source called ELK, Prometheus, Jaeger. I want to make sure every developer in the world can use it without all the hassle of open source, organizing it, installing, upgrading, maintaining, getting value. This was really the story behind founding Logs.io. I wanted to make sure open source is available for everyone. Some reasons why I think it's pretty broken and why most companies don't get the value that they pay for. First, Kubernetes as being a huge driver for success, right? You can deploy faster, but it actually creates an enormous amount of telemetry data. Every microservice creates logs and metrics and sometimes traces. 90% of this data is junk. No one needs it except for the vendors that charge for the ingestion of this data. So if you're one of the people that either have to set up their own open source environment or you're using one of the great vendors here, you're probably overpaying for data that has no value. I'm all in favor of paying a premium for something that is valuable. But most of the data, log data, metrics data, trace data has no value. Second part, everyone wants observability, right? I need unified observability. Most companies don't have the knowledge to actually get the value. So they start deploying more and more technologies, more and more tools. Do they actually able to get the value? Yeah, some of it from logging, for sure, some metrics. Some people, my experience in the market is that most people are not getting enough value. It's too expensive. When you get started, it's not a big deal. You take one of the vendors, either you set up your own ELK stack and Prometheus. It's pretty cool. You get started, it's not expensive. Over time, the value and the price just do not match. You see the complexity with Kubernetes serverless distributed environment is so complex. The people that walk around this booth, that sit in the sessions and have to comprehend 500 AWS services, it's so hard to understand what's going on. And there's a talent gap. The number of people in your organization that actually understand what's going on is pretty small. If I ask developers, given what choice, in a perfect world, would you like to use open source? Would you like to use a proprietary vendors? My claim is that most engineers, given the choice, would like to use open source. If you look at the leading vendors, and I mentioned them, very successful companies here, servicing about 40,000 companies around the world. The majority of the companies in the world are the orange ones. They are the ones that use ELK and OpenSearch. They use Prometheus. They use OpenTelemetry and Jaeger. This is actually the majority. And by the way, as I've mentioned, what we do at Logs.io is we only focus on the orange those people who use Prometheus and Jaeger and OpenTelemetry and OpenSearch, we have something for them that we think can help address some of these gaps that exist today in the market. So the journey starts like that. You set up an environment, either you're in an enterprise and you're modernizing one app, or you're a startup company, and you take one of these tools. There are 700,000 companies that use them. I'm sure you all use them. So you take the elk stack, OpenSearch, you start using it, your data grows, everyone is saying, hey, we have Kubernetes, we need to have Prometheus. Of course, let's throw in Prometheus. Let's have more data. Then you start to have more and more data, more microservices, more complexity. Over time, you say, okay, tracing, I just had a performance issues. It's time we adopt distributed tracing. So you go and you put OpenTelemetry is the coolest kid in the block, and you put distributed tracing in place. What we're seeing is as you deploy more of these tools, the MTTR, the mean time to resolution, only goes up. There was an interesting Forrester research published a couple of months ago. And in the research, they research every year how long it takes to solve a production issue. You would imagine with all the technologies here that things will get better. Every year, it takes longer to solve production issues than it took the year before because of the explosion of data, because of the explosion of tools. At that point, I want to talk a little bit about Logs.io. So we're a cloud observability company. Our mission is to build observability which is based on open source. A few things. First, we offer a way to use Kibana as a service, ELK as a service, Prometheus as a service, Jaeger as a service, as separate tools, so you don't have to go through setting up and upgrading and maintaining. The second part is we started to correlate these tools together. One of the biggest problems of open source observability is that it's pretty siloed. There are different databases in Prometheus, in Jaeger, and in OpenSearch. So we actually built a unified layer. If you're running these open sources and it's still so complex, unifying the data together can be something pretty meaningful and reduce the mean time to resolution. Today we announced something we call Kubernetes 360. It's a way to correlate, again, the data comes from Prometheus, 90 seconds of deployment, monitoring Kubernetes, drill it down from a central interface into Grafana, into Kibana, into Jaeger, understanding metrics and traces and logging. All we do at Logs.io, our mission is simplification. We're trying to solve a problem of a lot of tools and a lot of data and a talent gap by, hey, everything is out of the box. Everything takes minutes to deploy, and it's easy and consumable. There's still a big problem. There's still a lot of data. Most of the data is junk. It has no value. And it costs a lot of money. Even at Logs.io, it still costs a lot of money if you sell all this data and try to make sense of it. Some of the things that we do today, the number one thing is we're trying to reduce the data. So when you go up to Logs.io, there'll be a button called the Data Hub. What we do at Logs.io is we try to look at all the data and find the data you're extremely unlikely to use. On average, 80% of the data that's being sent will never be charged for, will never be processed in the way you imagine it's going to be processed. We take this 80% and we do a few things. First, we run all the analytics on it. You get alerts, you get visualization, you get the full value, but we never index this data. When you don't index the data, you don't pay for the data. Why don't we do it? Because we know how to identify and to recommend to you, look, this 80% is something you shouldn't be indexing. How do we know? For example, metrics you never visualize. Do you really need them? No. Data you've never searched in the past. Do you really have to have it as the most expensive index layer? No. Let's just aggregate the data. Let's get the analytics, but let's not index the data. We put the data into S3, and we have a slower search that runs on S3 in case you made a mistake. So imagine a flow of data where only a small portion of it is getting charged for, while the majority of the data gets alert, gets visualized, but never charged for. And I think over time, as you understand more your system, as you know what to do with the data, you can opt in and opt out of the data. Imagine us like a pipe with data, and you can really manage what you use the data for and how much data you want to consume. We're all in a financial situation where we have to manage our cost and our spend, and this is something Logzo has been doing for the last couple of years. Again, going back to cost, vendor lock-in is something as a CEO of a company with 250 employees and 270 vendors that we use, I hate vendor lock-in. I'm trying to use open source every time I can. So with Logz.io, we're based on the open source. People know. So if we're not doing a good job, go set up your own stack. Take it from Amazon. Build by yourself. It's not a problem. You will not get all the value, but you always have this option. The main mission, the only mission we have at Logz.io is to drive down complexity. Can we simplify? Do you have to have your engineers really focus on building, maintaining, correlating, organizing this, or can you have someone else helping you with that? That's really the essence of our value, and take the engineering team that you have, focusing on the most important things and not on managing and scaling open source. And really, if you summarize it, we call it optimization. We're trying to optimize the data, we're trying to optimize the experience, we're trying to optimize every part of the process so you'll have a simpler experience. That's it. Thank you for listening. I'm Tomer Levy. We have a booth here, which I don't know the number of, but it's right over there. If you want to learn more, it's on the website. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate your time. Thank you.